"If you cry, I will kill you right now instead of making you suffer." These were the words whispered to Claudine as 6 militia members took turns assaulting her. She was just 19 when the genocide began, one of approximately 500,000 women who would experience sexual violence during Rwanda's 100 Days of Terror. The stories you're about to hear have been silenced for decades, not just because they're difficult to tell, but because the world wasn't ready to listen. What happens when sexual violence becomes a weapon of war? And why were these atrocities deliberately overlooked in the aftermath? 1. The calculated brutality, sexual violence as a weapon. When she finally gathered the courage to speak, she told me they said they weren't just raping her. They were changing the Tutsi bloodline forever. These words, documented by a UN investigator, reveal the chilling reality behind Rwanda's genocide. While machetes and firearms dominated headlines, another weapon was deployed with surgical precision: sexual violence. The Rwandan genocide emerged from meticulously drafted plans, with militia leaders creating detailed instructions on how to target women. The infamous Hutu 10 Commandments, published in the extremist newspaper Kangura in 1990, explicitly sexualized Tutsi women, painting them as infiltrators who used their bodies to undermine Hutu power. This propaganda laid the groundwork for what would become a calculated campaign of gender-based violence, a blueprint for atrocity rather than random brutality. Military documents recovered after the genocide revealed that militia leaders specifically trained Interahamwe members to use rape as a tool of ethnic cleansing. One former commander admitted receiving direct orders: first, check what's between their legs, then destroy it before killing them. Training camps operated like assembly lines of cruelty, with instructors teaching specific torture techniques designed to maximize suffering. The systematic approach kept women alive, specifically for continued assault. Many survivors report being told that death would be too merciful. One survivor recounted, "They told me they would not waste a bullet on me. They would let AIDS do its work." HIV-positive men were deliberately selected to rape women, transforming their bodies into vessels of delayed death. Radio Télévision Libre des Mille Collines, RTLM, broadcast explicit encouragement of sexual violence. Hosts regularly described Tutsi women as seductresses who needed to be put in their place. One broadcaster told listeners, "The graves are only half full. Who will help us fill them?" Pregnant women faced particularly savage treatment. Testimonies collected by Rwanda's Ministry of Gender document hundreds of cases where perpetrators targeted pregnant women, cutting open their wombs to kill unborn children. As one witness explained, they would bet on the gender of the fetus, then they would slice open the mother to see who won the bet. This practice underscores how sexual violence functioned as a genocidal tool, killing existing Tutsi people and preventing future generations. The attackers engineered psychological devastation alongside physical harm. Women were assaulted in front of family members, husbands forced to watch wives being raped, children made to witness their mother's violation. One survivor described how her father was made to choose which daughter would be raped first. After that day, he never spoke again. They killed his soul without touching him. The International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda made history in 1998 with the Akayesu judgment, the first time an international court recognized rape as an instrument of genocide. The verdict acknowledged what survivors had always known: sexual violence was fundamental to the genocide's execution. 2. 100 Days of Horror, the unimaginable scale. While the Akayesu judgment marked a legal milestone, it only scratched the surface of a horror so vast that many researchers initially couldn't process its magnitude. Early UN documentation captured just a fraction of cases, perhaps a few hundred or thousand, creating a dangerously incomplete picture. When more comprehensive studies emerged years later, the numbers were staggering. Approximately 500,000 women and girls experienced sexual violence during those 100 days. That's over 5,000 attacks per day, or nearly 4 women assaulted every single minute for 3 months straight. A 1999 study by Rwanda's Ministry of Gender revealed a devastating truth. Among female genocide survivors who were over 12 years old at the time, between 70% and 90% had been sexually assaulted. These weren't abstract statistics. These were mothers, daughters, sisters, and wives who endured violence so extreme that traditional categories of war crimes proved insufficient to describe it. The forms of torture went far beyond what most documentation systems were designed to capture. Women were impaled with sharpened sticks, had acid poured onto their genitals, or were mutilated with machetes after being raped. One survivor from Kibuye province told researchers, "They took me into the bush. There were 6 of them. They raped me one after the other until I lost consciousness. When I woke, they were still there, still doing it. I thought I had died and gone to hell." The psychological warfare was equally calculated. Public gang rapes became commonplace, deliberately staged in community spaces, marketplaces, churches, schools, where the maximum number of people would witness the violence. This wasn't just about attacking individual women, but about destroying the social fabric that bound communities together. In many cases, husbands and children were forced to watch, creating psychological trauma that would ripple through generations. Particularly horrifying was the establishment of so-called rape houses, buildings where women and girls were held for extended periods specifically to be assaulted by multiple perpetrators. One survivor from Gitarama described being held in a house with 11 other women for 17 days. Men would come throughout the day, sometimes in groups of 10 or more. They kept a list on the wall, marking how many times each woman had been raped. They treated it like a competition. Healthcare workers who treated survivors after the genocide reported unprecedented levels of physical trauma. Dr. Odette Niramilimo, who worked with rape survivors in Kigali, stated, "I had never seen such severe injuries before. Some women arrived with their entire reproductive organs destroyed. We had no medical terminology to describe some of the injuries we were seeing." The data suggests that nearly 1 in 3 rape survivors contracted HIV as a result of their assaults. While some of this transmission was inevitable in a country with high HIV rates, survivor testimonies indicate something more deliberate was at work. Women frequently reported attackers telling them, "We won't kill you right away. We'll give you a slow death from AIDS instead." Militia members would sometimes announce their HIV status before assaults, transforming the virus into a biological weapon. Perhaps most chilling was how thoroughly this aspect of the genocide was erased from initial international reporting. Major news organizations covered the mass killings, but rarely mentioned the systematic rape campaign occurring simultaneously. When Human Rights Watch researcher Binaifer Noroji began documenting cases in late 1994, many international officials dismissed her findings as exaggerated. "They couldn't believe the numbers," she later wrote. "They kept asking if I was sure if the women were telling the truth. But the patterns were too consistent, the evidence too overwhelming to deny." What makes the Rwandan case distinct is not just the number of victims, but the methodical organization behind the violence. While sexual violence occurs in most conflicts, rarely has it been so deliberately structured, coordinated, and deployed as a primary strategy rather than a byproduct of war. This wasn't opportunistic violence, it was genocide conducted through women's bodies. 3. The forgotten victims, children born of rape. The strategic violence against women's bodies didn't end with the genocide. It created a generational echo that continues today. For the estimated 20,000 Rwandans conceived during those 100 days of terror, their very existence represents an impossible contradiction. Born of hatred, yet innocent of its crimes, technically belonging to their father's ethnic group, the same group that tried to eliminate their mothers. When the killing finally stopped in July 1994, thousands of women made a devastating discovery amid the ruins of their country. They were pregnant with their attackers' children. In Rwanda's traditional society, where abortion was illegal and carried heavy prison sentences, these women faced impossible choices. As one survivor explained, "I wanted to die. I asked myself how I could give birth to a child of a man who slaughtered my family, but I had no choice." Those who kept their children often paid a steep social price. Many families rejected both mother and child. viewing the infant as an unwelcome reminder of the horrors they had endured. Communities that had once been supportive networks became sources of isolation. "They call my son Little Killer or Son of a Snake," reported one mother to researchers from Foundation Rwanda. "Other children are not allowed to play with him." These children received a name that follows them through life: enfants mauvais souvenirs, or children of bad memories. Others call them children of hate, unwanted children, or most tellingly, children of the enemy. The language itself reveals the impossible position these innocent lives occupy in Rwandan society. As one mother confided to aid workers, "Sometimes when I look at this child, I remember what his father did to me, and I find it hard to love him. But he is still my child." The psychological impact on these children has been profound. Many grew up sensing something was different about them without knowing exactly what. In numerous cases, mothers kept the circumstances of conception secret, creating a mystery these children could feel but not understand. One young man, now in his late 20s, recounted, "My whole childhood I knew something was wrong. People would whisper when I walked by. It wasn't until I was 16 that my aunt finally told me the truth about my father." Rwanda's post-genocide identity politics created additional complications. In a society where ethnic divisions were officially eliminated after 1994, these children technically belonged to their father's ethnic group under traditional patrilineal rules. Yet they were raised by traumatized Tutsi mothers. This contradiction left many struggling with divided identities, belonging fully to neither group. Rwandan organizations working with these families document heartbreaking patterns. Mothers often report cycling through conflicting emotions: love for their child, interrupted by sudden triggers when the child displays physical features resembling the attacker. One survivor described her experience: "When he was angry, he would make the same face as the man who raped me. I would have to leave the room and cry. Then I would feel guilty for seeing him that way." Studies of these now adult children show significantly higher rates of depression, suicide attempts, and substance abuse compared to their peers. Many report profound identity crises that began in adolescence and continue into adulthood. Without specialized mental health support, these young adults often struggle to form healthy relationships or envision positive futures for themselves. The Rwandan government has made efforts to address these challenges through educational support and community reconciliation projects, but resources remain limited. Organizations like Sevota provide counseling to both mothers and their children, helping them navigate their complex relationships. Their founder, Godelieve Mukasarasi, notes, "These mothers have performed a miracle, raising children conceived in violence with whatever love they could find, but they shouldn't have to do it alone." What makes this situation particularly tragic is how these children embody both the crime and its continuation. Their existence represents a form of intergenerational trauma that Rwanda has only begun to address. Without adequate support, the genocide's impact will continue reverberating through Rwandan society for generations to come. The horrors of Rwanda's genocide weren't random acts of violence, they were carefully orchestrated strategies that specifically weaponized women's bodies as battlegrounds. Rape wasn't collateral damage, it was part of the plan. Today, this legacy lives on through intergenerational trauma, fractured communities, and justice systems still struggling to adequately address sexual violence in conflict zones. The scars aren't just personal, they're national, generational, and ongoing. So ask yourself, what would you have done if you were a journalist on the ground in 1994? Would you have risked your life to document these atrocities, or evacuated with other foreigners when the UN pulled out? If the dark corners of history fascinate you, subscribe and hit that notification bell, because history isn't just recorded, it's shaped by those who choose to witness it and those who look away.